On February 9th, 2016, a game was released to nothing but praise, currently sitting at a very positive rating on Steam with over 53,697 reviews, though it is probably more by now since it has been a bit since I've recorded this. This game is talked about as one of the best indie games ever made, with ravenous fans still talking about it nearly a decade after its release. Do you know what game it is? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Toysvill, and today we will be talking about the game Firewatch. Now, you may be asking me, Dino, why are you covering a game that released in 2016? Well, a lot of people still talk about this game as one of the best indie games, putting up with the likes of Inscription, Hollow Knight, and Outer Wilds. In fact, and yes, I know, IGN is very bad when it comes to their rankings. I still need to say that in their list of top 100 indie games, Firewatch is put above games like Blasphemous, Amnesia, Soma, Thank Goodness You're Here, and The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. All games that blow Firewatch out of the water in gameplay and story. So yeah, while the game's old, I still feel it's fair game by how people talk about it. And also, its 10th anniversary is actually coming up pretty soon, so I feel like it's actually probably a great time to talk about it. Now, for anyone that is not aware of the game, Firewatch is a walking simulator about a guy that got a job in a fire lookout tower to get away from his life. What that life is, we'll go over later. He meets his coworker from another tower through talking, not walking, on the radio, as we go through lookout jobs and find out the mystery of whether someone is watching us in the forest or not. Sounds pretty interesting, right? And yeah, the concept is pretty good, and if written properly, I could completely understand why this game would be ranked so high in people's minds. But unfortunately to me, Camposanto, the developers behind Firewatch, they end up dropping the ball on this concept, and it is quite disappointing. Firewatch starts with a word-click adventure thing. I don't know the actual name for these kinds of things. When I put word-click adventure game into Google, it just shows me an ad for Sudoku, so you get my explanation. This style is not used for any other part of the game, and is kind of just there to explain the background of the story. And honestly, I would have just preferred if we just went on a hike with Henry while he narrates his relationship problems. I mean, it is the most obvious version of tell not show I think I've ever seen. It's literally just words on a screen. Anyways, what this section is essentially saying is the story of how Henry met his wife Julia, as well as randomly putting a picture of Henry's dick on our screen for literally no reason. This isn't even there for a later point of the story as like a Chekhov's cock. We just get a flaccid peen on our screen in order to prove the game is for adults, I guess. I feel like the swearing was enough, but hey, we all know how weird those game rating systems can be, so maybe it was actually needed. Anyways, we then go through Julia slowly developing early onset dementia, as Henry decides that she needs professional help and sends her to a home. Then, instead of moving close to the home, or at least visiting often, he just says fuck it, watches as her own sister moves to be closer to Julia, drops the lines, I always liked Susie, then sees a job for a fire lookout job and decides to ditch his dementia-ridden wife for a whole summer to take it. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, our protagonist for the game is one of those extremely flawed characters, which I would be fine with. It gives us a character arc to go through, with Henry not realizing that visiting his wife is a good idea. Whoa! As he realizes that he is an extremely selfish person, he changes for the better. But, and I hate to spoil the end of the game already, but by the end of the game, the only development is him going from, I refuse to visit her, to only saying he'll visit in one optional line out of 3. So now we're stuck with a dude feeling all sorry for himself about his wife's condition that never learns from his mistakes because he's a snivelly little bitch. We enter the look tower where we'll be for the next few months, and get a call from our coworker who is in the tower you can see in the distance by the name of Delilah. As for her character, I mean, we'll go over more of it throughout the video, but as of now, I like her. She's a bit sarcastic, but seems to have a good heart, and at the very least is better than Henry. Delilah radioed us while drunk, and asks us what is wrong with us in order to pick a job that isolates us from most of the world. After a bit of bickering, Delilah decides to guess herself and immediately hits a bit too close to home, saying we probably got dumped, which is kinda close, since our wife probably doesn't remember our sorry ass since we never bothered to visit. We wake up the next day to finally begin our job, which is immediately uprooted by teens setting off fireworks in a highly flammable area of the forest, because teens are just the worst. We get to be the ones to rudely interrupt them, because that's technically our job as well, I guess, despite, park rangers existing for this very reason. Though it definitely makes for a better game than just sitting in a tower jerking our shit until, a fire happens. So maybe it's for the best. In fact, they actually do say that the closest ranger is 2 days away, which wouldn't make any sense either, but hey, at least they try to cover their tracks on why the gameplay isn't boring. Where the teens are is a cliff, so we get to grab a mysteriously old rope from a supply stash, which when we use it for the very first time, it immediately snaps as we give ourselves CTE on the nice, soft rocks 20 feet from the top. After probably getting the best layup to a lawsuit I've ever seen, Henry immediately gets up to make his concussion as bad as he can, and finds some beer cans as well as 2 backpacks, probably from either the teens or a Bigfoot cosplayer hoping to get shot. Either way, after stomping out their campfire, we do move forward and see a bunch of clothes scattered around, with you finally stepping out to see 2 girls skinny dipping in complete shadow, drawing you further into question why I had to see Henry's 2 balls in a bond. We chase the girls off by chucking their radio into the lake, killing at least a few fish. Fortunately, you don't get to see me do it, since I thought we were gonna see actual boobies on screen, so I blocked it with my chesticles. But let's just say they were so pissed that they needed to go despawn behind a rock. We head back to our tower through a canyon, since we can't go the first way thanks to our shoddy equipment. At the end of the canyon, we find another shadow person staring at us from atop the cliff, leading me to theorize that everyone Henry sees is secretly a demon creature, and everything is just a dream. I don't have any proof, but it's not my headcanon, and you can't do a thing to convince me otherwise. When we make it back to the tower, we see our poor typewriter on the ground completely unharmed, as well as a broken window where they stole my precious bedding. For obvious reasons, we assume that it's probably the teens we tried to electrocute earlier, and Delilah says that she'll call the trailheads in the morning. So, with nothing more we can do, we sleep in our beddingless bed, hoping those teens don't break in and during the night to smother us in our sleep. We wake up the next day to one of the phone lines being cut, leaving us completely alone in these woods, because our bosses wouldn't know what a backup system is if it ran them over in the parking lot. Once again, it's our job to save the day, as we backtrack through the canyon in order to take another path up to where the broken line is. Before we get far though, we catch Delilah speaking to someone over the radio saying, "He doesn't know," and is immediately abrasive when we ask who she is talking about. Suspicious, suspicious. But it's not like we can exactly start throwing a tantrum until we get the truth, so we continue to the wire. And here is where I'll be talking about the main gameplay loop of Firewatch. It's walking. I don't really know what I was expecting, but just walking around a forest wasn't really it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are walking simulators that do a good job at making the act of walking around interesting. What Remains of Edith Finch comes to mind, a game where I will absolutely be making a video on it in the future. It is so great. But where Edith Finch makes every section of the house feel different by giving every room its own theme, Firewatch is just woods. And while taking a walk through the woods in real life can be fun, doing it in game where the only animals are squirrels and birds, it's just not anywhere near interesting enough to carry the game itself, which leaves the story to do the heavy lifting. And hey, at least for the first day in game, I would say it's doing well. It set up a relationship with Delilah and also the mystery of who the guy stalking us might be and his possible motive. Now all we have to do is hope the game can keep revving up its engine until it makes it to the finale. We finally make it to the cut-up wire, where we find more of the same beer cans the teens were drinking earlier, as well as our undies with "Go to Hell" and a crude drawing of a ranger drawn in Sharpie all over it. After Delilah stops thinking about telling us to murder the girls, we finally decide that as adults, the best course of action is to destroy their camp while they're a 2-day hike away from the closest other ranger, leaving them to die slowly until a bear finds them, which I think we can all say is what any other sane adult would conclude. After following a trail of empty beer cans, we find another backpack stuck in a tree. But this time, it isn't one of the teens. It's a backpack full of ropes and a disposable camera that belongs to someone named Brian Goodwin, who Delilah says is the son of an old ranger named Ned that left a few years ago. She also states that the kid being there was definitely not safe in the slightest, and she purposely broke the rules to let the kid stay. Which, while definitely not the right thing to do, I can at least see the logic in not wanting the kid to be separated from his dad. So while not exactly a good idea, it doesn't really sour my opinion of Delilah as of now. Anyways, after immediately taking 5 pictures of my nutsack with the camera, we continue our journey to find the girls. Where after finding a fence that definitely isn't supposed to be there, we find a thin column of smoke, meaning another campfire has been lit nearby. Thinking it might be the girls we want to unalive. Thanks, YouTube. We rush our way to the camp, where we find that a bear most likely beat us to the punch. After looting their camp, we find a note left by them reading, Dear Psycho, I hope you're fucking happy. We're leaving and we're gonna find the police or whatever and tell them how you creeped on us in the lake and then came and destroyed our campsite and all of our stuff. Oh, and stealing panties is gross out. You're probably a mental fucking axe murderer and so going to jail. I hope it was worth being a jerk over some fireworks, dick. Heart emoji. Now, unfortunately, this means the girls weren't there when the camp was attacked, and now we're seen as some form of panty bandit that will be going to prison for peeping on teenagers. However, with nothing we can really do about the situation, we head back to the lookout tower and wake up next day to put some boards over our windows. The next few days are just us expanding our relationship with Delilah, where she asks us what we look like and explains that for the most part lookout work is pretty boring. After these days passed, we wake up in the middle of the night to a hallucination of Julius calling us on the radio. Now, I already know that some people are gonna say that this is proof that Henry feels bad for ditching his wife, but none of the dialogue options have anything close to, hey babe, sorry for skedaddling like a dad going on their pilgrimage for milk. Best we can say to her is, yeah, the job's kind of weird. There's a big difference between psychologically missing your wife and admitting you're a screw-up. Sure, deep down he probably knows he's a terrible person. That doesn't make him not a bad person, because he refuses to listen to that part of himself and never reflects on that fact. On day 33 of our journey, we actually have something to do again. I mean, pick up some supplies because the park couldn't be asked to deliver them to our towers. While making the trek to the literal other side of the map, Delilah decides to tell us that our weird dream about Julia was semi-real, and we were just murmuring sappy shit into the radio in the middle of the night. After fighting our urge to jump off of one of the nearby cliffs thanks to that info, we finally admit that we shouldn't be here, or at least that's one of the 3 options we can choose. Not really character development, but hey, at least we get the option to admit we're terrible. Delilah decides to try to cheer us up from our self-pity by telling us about how she screwed up a really good relationship she had with a guy named Javier. They ended up dating for 5 years before Javier's brother had an accident, and Delilah didn't leave her job to be with him, which ended up with them breaking up, and Delilah getting this job to cope with the guilt. Now this is how you write a flawed but likable character. She makes a mistake that isn't completely unforgivable, and accepts that she screwed up and tries to be better. She isn't wallowing in her own self-pity, but accepts that she screwed up. In fact, she even says that they both screwed up, which is met with complete silence by Henry. Real smooth, dipshit. Even the girl listening to your story knows that you are completely at fault for being such a sack of donkey feces. Unfortunately, the game treats these 2 bad choices as equal, despite the fact that if these 2 things happened to someone I knew personally, I would only smack the shit out of one of these people that did that to them. And newsflash, it ain't the one that wasn't there when they were grieving. We finally make it to the supply box, grab our specific supplies, and head back to the tower. When we wake up, we find ourselves in the most uncomfortable part of this game. The part that goes from me defending my lady, Delilah, to seeing her as just as much of a loser as Henry. Because now we get to the part where the game developers try to shoehorn in not a ransom, I wish it was a ransom plot, that'd be more interesting, but a romance plot for one scene, then just drop it afterwards. We skip to the night of day 64 of us being there, marking 2 months out of the roughly 3 months that we would be at the park for the summer, and as you can see by my reaction, day 64! Oh my god, you've abandoned your Alzheimer's wife for 64 days. You are an awful human being. Oh. Yeah, I was getting pretty tired of our main character's apathy towards his sins. We're awoken by Delilah telling us about a fire outside, which we do at the very least call in. We decide on a name for the fire, with our options being the Big Fire, The Flapjack Fire, which refers to a joke that she made about a guy earlier in the game that I kind of skipped over because it wasn't important. And Delilah. Yep, we're allowed to be the person that starts the flirting by doing the worst possible idea. Calling a fire, destroying a forest, and probably killing animals after the lady we're trying to cheat on our wife with. Delilah then admits that she's pretty drunk since she just grabbed a bottle she chucked into a stream to get it cold and is now drinking from it, having learned it from her sister in Santa Fe. After being told we'd like Santa Fe, we once again get the option to flirt with her. The options, I'm sure, I've had a bad time with tequila, and I will defile with you. Yeah, I know these are optional dialogues in a game that only has one ending, no way to change said ending. Editor's note here, you are technically allowed to just not get on the helicopter at the end and essentially kill yourself, but besides that, it's all the same no matter what you do. But you can't tell me that this man is redeemable after doing what he did with his wife, then at the very least seriously thinking about emotionally cheating on said wife after abandoning her. Then comes Delilah's turn to be flirty, which, to be honest, on the second viewing isn't as bad as I originally thought it was. She basically just says that she doesn't speak to the other lookouts like she does with Henry, and she's happy they have such a connection. For dropping the line, I wish I was over there. Now, this can definitely be seen as slightly flirty with the whole I wish we were together vibe, but I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that she meant it in a lonely platonic way, solely based on the fact that she hasn't really done anything like this before in the game. Henry, of course using all 5 of his brain cells, hears the words I wish I was over there, and after immediately covering his boner has 2 options, silence or me too. Yeah, whether or not Delilah meant that in a friendly way, Henry definitely took it in the hanky-panky way. Then the night ends. Wait, no, looks like there's a little bit more.
We could sit outside. We could talk without these radios. We could...
Did I accidentally flirt with her?
You know...
We have sloppy sex? What could we do?
What could we do?
Well... Let me tell you.
God fucking damn it. I gave you so much slack, Delilah, and you had to go and try to get down and dirty with this fucking bozo. This dude has to be some guy's self-insert, because there's no way someone without their head in their own ass wrote a dude that wouldn't know responsibility if his uncle got shot and thought themselves, yeah, this dude would get all the bitches. I could honestly rant on for hours about how much I hate this absolute chud of a human being. But that would probably be a video that gets me banned. So we're going up to move on to the next day, or I guess 12 days later, since the next section is our 76th day here. The day opens to us deciding to go fishing without a license, because Henry's tired of the food he has. Now, this is nitpicking compared to the other stuff he's done. I will say that poaching from your own national park, not because you ran out of food, but just because you got tired of whatever food you had left, is still kind of a dick move. But hey, at least it's just a molehill compared to the mountain of his other flaws. Now, Delilah asks us to see if there's any evidence of a bear near the lake, since a controlled fire may have pushed one towards it. She's once again not flirty in the slightest, nor is she really ever again, besides maybe the very end of the game. This makes me think that either they decided to make her someone that gets really flirty while drunk, or they immediately realized that they were making their main character too much of an ass and decided to immediately dial it back without bothering to fix the fire scene. Either way, it's pretty dumb. While looking for any tracks, we find a clipboard left on a rock that has all of Henry's and Delilah's messages written on it, including the Fire Night ones. While freaking out about being spied on, we also find a red radio on the ground, and when we pick it up, someone punches us in the back of the head and knocks us out, stealing back both the clipboard and radio, leaving us with no proof of the possible spy. After being unconscious for a few moments, or at least enough for the guy to run away without a trace of him, Henry gets up and is immediately fine despite the fact that getting punched in the back of the head to the point of being unconscious would cause brain damage in most people. But I don't know, maybe this guy has Homer Simpson brain. While freaking out, Henry remembers one line that wasn't part of their calls, being the name Wapiti Station. Delilah has no clue what this is, but does say there is a place called Wapiti Meadow in the park, and to maybe look there for clues. She also points out that the meadow is exactly where we found that random fence earlier I kinda glossed over. Finally, the broth thickens, and we're getting to the main point of this game, only about halfway through it. I mean, to be fair, the game is only 3-ish hours long, which in my opinion, for $20 is abysmal, but maybe that's just me. We make it to the area and see a fence with a locked door. The game does actually let us pick up a rock and try to break the lock, but Henry takes 2 half swings, and like most of his life, decides that it was too much effort and immediately gives up. Why even give us the option to be a sensible protagonist if you don't have the rock break and instead we just give up? I mean, at this point I would have just preferred if it wasn't an option we just go by game tropes logic, or we ignore obvious stuff because it makes the game less interesting. After failing to open a very easy door and not climbing the fence with 0 barbed wire at the top, we decide to ask the fire scouts from that controlled fire for help. I mean, the dude can rock climb and climb up ropes, but doesn't dare climb the 10-foot fence. Either he's just stupid, or doesn't actually want to find out what's in the fence. Which would have been an interesting piece, but they didn't think about that. Now, of course, normally I would just put this as game logic. When you open the floodgates with that rock bullshit, every flaw about this plan, to me, becomes fair game. After making it to the fire control area, we find an old abandoned summer camp known as Camp Arapaho? I hope that's how you pronounce it, because the other way would be kind of a really bad way to pronounce it. Which, by the way, this is an actual Native American tribe, which from my quick look at Wikipedia is a tribe located near Colorado that seem to be known as traders and warriors. And I mean traders as in like giving like items for stuff, not traders to Native Americans. And these people are actually one of the 2 tribespeople massacred in the infamous Sand Creek Massacre. And honestly, they seem like a really interesting tribe. I'm definitely gonna look more into them out of just like plain old curiosity. Unfortunately, the game just uses the name, which while I would admonish, the unfortunate truth of a lot of these summer camps is that they would take a Native American tribe's name and then do absolutely nothing related to them. But either way, while I would have liked personally for Campo Santo to actually have the camp be based more around the Arapaho, it is the harsh reality of these camps. And after looking around the camp, we do actually find in-game an axe stuck in a tree that we immediately steal, as well as note telling us that a Ben Stimmons of Wapiti Station is the one that ordered the fire line. We'll also find a good old-fashioned shit trowel that we can make Henry pick up despite the fact it's set right next to toilet paper and is really obvious what its purpose is. Henry and Delilah come to the conclusion that Wapiti Station must be actually studying them while pretending to care about wildflowers. While discussing plans, they hear a cough over their radio that isn't either of them, proving that their radio is absolutely tapped. The next day, Delilah decides to get us a new radio, but doesn't want the stalker to know that information, so gives us cryptic clues about where to come pick up said radio. Henry, to his credit, does actually pick up on this pretty early compared to his other stupidities, so he gets 1 extra point to his chart that's probably at like negative 500 by now. But anyways, after heading off to the pickup stop, we eventually find a new lockbox that doesn't have the same code as the rest, being 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead, Delilah decides to immediately give away some of our plan by saying she changed the code and then gives the code across the radio, which would definitely raise some red flags with our stalker. And Henry, of course, in his infinite wisdom, then decides to leave the old radio in the box, instead of maybe keeping it to lie to the stalkers about how onto their plan we actually are. I mean, either way, this isn't how radios work. Radios use radio waves, which is a set signal. So once you crack that said signal, anyone talking on that exact same radio wave would easily be recracked in almost instantly. So they basically just wasted a bunch of time. But video game logic, so we'll just pretend like that's not how radios work. But after confirming the new radio does work, we immediately rush towards Wapiti Meadow to break into that fenced-off site. Delilah also decides to tell us that instead of reporting that we had seen the two teens earlier, who at this point have mysteriously gone missing, she instead reported that we hadn't seen them, incriminating ourselves in their disappearance. And thanks to the stalker taking transcripts, there's obvious evidence of her lie. Ugh, God. Yeah, unfortunately, Delilah kinda sucks now. She was great for, like, most of the first half of the game, but after the fire night, she essentially becomes a different person, and much like Henry, never receives any actual consequence for these terrible decisions, at least during the game. They kinda hint that some of the events of the game might be blamed on Delilah and Henry, but if it's not in the game itself, I'm not really gonna count it as consequences, because we never get to hear or see them get their comeuppance. So now, we're just stuck with two main characters that suck as people and never really grow, or, in Delilah's case, even degrade. It would be interesting, honestly, if the game went into the idea that maybe Henry's dragging Delilah down to his level, but the game never really goes that way, and just leaves us with two little assholes. When we finally make it back to the fence, we use the axe, not to cut the chain or hit the lock really hard even, but we use the back of it like it's a freaking crowbar, and I don't even know what I should complain about here. Because, I mean, yeah, there's nothing technically wrong with it. It would work. But why the hell would you pick up an axe over literally any other lawn object if you're just gonna have Henry stick his fucking schlong in the door to open it for all I care? But, God, I'm fucking stupid. After we crack the door open, we walk towards a seeming science lab site with a monitoring tower, one of those archaeological grid things I forgot the name of, an earthquake monitor, a barometer, and a wave receiver, which I assume is what was used to get into our comms, but we never hear any radio chatter through it, even when we're talking, so maybe they just like receiving waves. Henry immediately picks it up and knows exactly what it is for some reason, and when he turns it on, he finds a signal coming from the tent. Dun, dun, dun. Of course, this isn't actually what a wave receiver even does, or even looks like, but hey, it's a video game, so it's not like this is a sin like the monstrosity of not animating people playing the piano correctly. Those guys go straight to hell. Now, following the signal sends you to a desk where, after you pick up some piece of paper that are essentially like character sheets for Henry and Delilah with details about them they didn't tell each other, and a rating on their susceptibility to manipulation. Now, these sheets do come back later, but don't you worry, this game will absolutely drop the ball on this interesting twist. They also say that Delilah and the guy she ditched are still together, but not only does Delilah deny this, but it is never mentioned again, and is what I'm assuming is probably disproven later in the game, so I don't really know why they decided to include this. Is it to make Delilah seem worse? Because you already did that by having her obviously flirt with a married dude and possibly... Is it called sexting if it's over a phone call? Whatever, I'm getting into semantics. Anyways, while watching a forest fire. So, it's shoehorned. Now, Delilah immediately suggests that we burn the site down, and as we leave the fence area after, talking her down, the site starts burning down. Thus going to end up as the main suspects, because skip to the next day, we wake up to the wave receiver beeping again, we follow it to a strange backpack with a key to a door blocking a cave I didn't bother mentioning before, because it didn't matter until now, but if you're curious where it is, it's roughly where Delilah's talking to some random dude over the radio, which, now that I think about it, we're never told the answer to who that was. The only theory I got is maybe Javier, but she's talking more about not knowing anything, so maybe it's someone asking her if Javier knows where she is? Like I said, they never bother telling us, so it feels more like theory bait than anything else. But back on track. While we're grabbing the backpack, Delilah mentions that someone's in our lookout tower. Rush and find a cassette player taped to our door, with the tape inside being the recording to Delilah threatening to burn the science site down, with our refusal cut out. So obviously someone is trying to frame us as arsonists, which would be correct, but hey, I never claim fires I don't start. Delilah is obviously freaking out because, well, that's pretty easy jail time. We're literally on tape saying we're gonna burn it down. This came out before AI was really a thing, so she's really screwed. But after this, we do cut to the next day, being day 78. And I think I forgot to update this last time. I'm too lazy to actually double check, so just know that this is now over 2.5 months since Henry has visited his wife with dementia. I know I've been saying that a lot, but I want to sink into your skin what this dude did, and let me ask, what has he done to actually realize he's a bad person? One line. One line about how he shouldn't be there. That's how much of a piece of shit this guy is. He doesn't care in the slightest. He's more involved with his new hot side piece he's never even seen before than the wife he was supposed to have known for decades. This man is one of the most vile protagonists I have ever had the displeasure of playing as, because not only has he done these things, but the game portrays the actions as not that bad. I don't mind playing as someone like Trevor from GTA 5, or the Lamb from Cult of the Lamb, or even the Mass Killer, Star Killer, Galen Merrick from The Force Unleashed. Those games make it pretty clear that what they're doing is pretty messed up, and in Galen's case, he starts killing the bad guys at the end, so it makes more sense. But either way, they make it clear they're doing bad things. Like, even compared to the other bad people in GTA 5, people are like, wow, Trevor's a pretty screwed up guy. But not Henry, no. Firewatch just gives Henry excuse after excuse about why what he did wasn't as heinous as it was. They act like if Henry went to visit his wife, he'd be even allowed in the building. But if I was Julia's family member, he'd be lucky to be walking away with an unbroken nose because of what he did. I'm going to give you an example of what I believe is a good main character that abandoned his wife. Similar premise, you know, from one of my personal favorite games, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. For anyone that hasn't played this game, first off, please do. I know most Assassin's Creed, or just Ubisoft in general games nowadays, aren't exactly the best, but this one is really good. But Edward Kenway is a pirate that abandoned his farming job hoping to make a dishonest living as a pirate. Pirates of the Caribbean kind, not the actual pirates that I can't say the stuff they actually did because it's against TOS. Of course, this means temporarily, hopefully, abandoning his girlfriend / wife to chase this dream. Now, Edward did this mostly for his own gain, because his pride makes him think he's destined for so much more, but he also does have doubts about himself and thinks that he needs to be the perfect man for his girlfriend / wife, which is one of the reasons why he leaves. But throughout the game, we see Edward realize how selfish he's being, as he has flashbacks of his last meeting with the woman he loves, which was essentially her leaving him for his selfishness. In the end, he learns that she unfortunately passed and had apparently been pregnant before he left pirating with his daughter. Knowing he cannot make it up, of course, he decides to raise his daughter and later his son from his second marriage. Now, I know that it sounds like he purposefully abandoned a pregnant woman. I will say this is set in like the 1700s, and she didn't have an obvious bump in the flashback, so I doubt Edward actually knew this fact. But why am I bringing this up? Simple. Let's just compare Edward and Henry's character growth throughout their games and their punishments for their actions. Edward goes from being too stubborn and insecure about his ability to provide, so he abandons his wife that happened to be pregnant. 2, a man that immediately takes the responsibility of being a father is now fighting for the greater good. In canon anyways, you can make Edward stab as many innocent people as you want technically. Now, Henry, on the other hand, starts as a man that abandons his wife for a fire lookout job because he is uncomfortable with the fact that she is slowly losing her memory, and beforehand rarely visited her, and ends as a man that we only see say that he'll visit Julia without any evidence of him doing exactly that. And that's only one of the 3 options that I can give. The other 2 have nothing to do with him saying, yes, I will absolutely visit Julia. Now, let's look at the consequences. Edward doesn't get the chance to apologize to his wife because she passes before he gets his head straight, and according to his daughter, she died thinking Edward had abandoned her forever, and now he has to live with that shame. Henry has no repercussions besides maybe needing to be questioned about a mysterious fire, which wouldn't be able to hold up in any real court thanks to the fact that saying you'll do something in a fit of anger does not equal deciding to actually do it. Henry even gets to probably go back home and visit his wife without the family calling him a piece of shit, because for some odd reason nobody called him out for never visiting, and only some people called him out for putting his wife in a home in the first place. Now, one of these characters, you have to choose one of these characters. Which one do you think had the better character arc? Because I know which one I think. God, what the hell am I doing? The game isn't even over yet and I'm already spoiling the shitty ending. You guys still need to suffer through the build-up. So let's get back to... kill me. As I was saying, we wake up the next day and decide to go check what's in the cave that some mystery guy just had to give us the key for. Despite the fact it's like the most obvious trap I think I've ever seen. And once we do enter the cave, of course someone locks the door behind us, and we also lose signal with Delilah, leaving us trapped in this cave. Huh. Who could have seen this coming? But luckily, after a bit of absolutely amazing parkour, we make it to another entrance to the cave where we find the secret hideout of Brian Goodwin, that one kid we stole the ropes from. Now, to summarize what we find, since the video is long enough, we learned that Brian was both a really smart kid and he didn't like rock climbing, but his dad, Ned, kept on making him do it anyways. Yay, foreshadowing. We also find some anchors so we can make our own rope spots, which would let us get deeper into this cave. We circle back into the first entrance to find what is in there. Someone would want to trap us with it, so we need to find out what it is for some odd reason as we descend deeper into the cave. And at the bottom, we find...
Oh, shit. You... Oh, God. You're Brian Goodwin. God. Poor kid.
Yep, that's right. We find a good old child corpse with the rock covered in heads, since I guess you can show a child corpse torso, but not the head. I mean, to be fair, the game does treat this fact that we found a child dead pretty serious, with Henry definitely sounding pretty traumatized about it. And we then immediately step right over the body and leave the cave to tell Delilah that she may have had a hand in accidentally killing a child by not reporting that he was in the forest. And Delilah, for what it's not worth, does take it weirdly well. Hey guys, editor's note here. So for some odd reason, when I was recording the final part of this, it just decided to corrupt itself, so all of this has been re-recorded afterwards, so it might sound a little bit different. Hope it's not that bad, but if it is, sorry. I've kind of lost the ability to use the old ones for whatever reason. But back to the video. Now, I was expecting some form of yelling about how it's all her fault, but she immediately cracks a joke about how if she did report him, she wouldn't know where he would be, but it would definitely not be in that cave. Now, this could just be like a voice acting mistake. It was meant to sound less sarcastic. You know, like that stupid Yellow Jacket meme of him hitting his wife that definitely wasn't supposed to happen. But as it is, kind of just make Delilah sound like a bitch. I mean, I'll play it for you here.
I don't know where he'd be, but I can assure you it would not be rotting at the bottom of that cave.
Yeah, I don't know. It could just be me, but to me, it just kind of sounds ingenuous. Sorry, I had to figure out a word for it. Yeah, it just sounds ingenuous. Finally, we make it to our final day, being day 78. The Flapjack Fire and the Sight Fire have combined to become one big unmitigated disaster, causing the forest to be filled with smoke, which would probably just straight up kill Henry and Delilah, but I don't know, video game logic. Now, Delilah decides to tell us to follow the signal that the wave receiver has suddenly started beeping at, and she tells us to do this before it actually starts beeping, and I don't even know how she heard it because we didn't hear it, but maybe, just maybe, she's in on it. So we'll have to find out. But Henry, not being worried about suffocating on carbon, decides that wonderful idea, so he follows the signal. And when you finally make it to the end, you find another cassette tape, which is connected to a rope that leads to the top of a cliff. You play the tape, and we hear a masculine voice with the subtitles immediately spoiling his name, for he doesn't, as like, anything to reveal his identity. Like, it's Ned. Like, I think most people thought it was gonna be Ned after we saw his kids. I like my kids. His kid's body, but, I mean, some people might have liked the twist. He, of course, tries to explain himself about how Brian dying was an accident and how he hid to avoid consequences, and he ends the tape with him saying he's sorry about Henry's wife. Which, well, a guy that killed his son calling Henry a piece of shit for what he did would be hypocritical. I feel that it would have been better than just another person throwing Henry a pity party. In his man cave, we find drafts for, like, the character sheets I mentioned earlier, radio equipment, and many other things proving everything was him. And to that, I say, what the actual fuck were they smoking when writing this? How the hell does a dude whose only known job being fire lookout know how to set up a radio to intercept signals, set up a whole archaeological site, make fake documents, get a whole ass generator up a cliff without any help, without any internet, and without any previous knowledge of these things? It is a complete and utter cop-out of an interesting government conspiracy plotline for no reason besides they either didn't think they could write one good enough, or they legit thought this horse ass was a better twist ending. This is Han's level of random twist villains. Guy has like 2 lines about him and his son. I expected to find his like kid dead somewhere. Just kind of made sense, like Chekhov's gun and all that fun stuff. But the fact that it's literally just Ned and nobody else is the stupidest way to end this plot. A teenager in their emo phase could probably write a better ending to this mystery. Deep breaths. Henry walks to Delilah's lookout tower because, for some odd reason, the pickup spot to get out of the fire is set up for Delilah's easy access, but we get to walk. As we're walking, Delilah decides to ditch us because she doesn't want to sit there waiting for us, which made me hope that maybe the government thing was real and they're just using Ned as a scapegoat and that's like what they're setting up. But alas, nobody on the team thought of that idea, so we just get Delilah being awful again. We finally make it to her tower, she calls our truck a piece of shit, and the game finally gets a chance to wrap up this weird relationship they started us on for no reason. Starts by going over the fact that they suck at the job because they technically started a fire. I don't know why they are acting like it was them, but I don't know. And for that, they decide, you know what? Let's have Delilah and Henry decide what each other should do next. We get an option between her moving to Santa Fe, becoming a shrink, or coming with us to Boulder. Now, when I was playing, I chose Boulder because, I mean, I was already tired of Henry. And I do truly believe that that moron would say that answer canonically. But luckily, Delilah refuses, and is finally the first character out of everyone to finally tell us to visit Julia and maybe write a story about what happened here. Henry, like the asshole he is, only has 1 option out of 3. I know I've said it multiple times, but this is when it actually happens in the game. 1 option that says he'll visit. With the others being, she won't recognize me, and fucking, I have to move on. Anyone, and I mean anyone, that sees this dude and thinks, that's one of the best stories I've ever played through, needs to either stop reading smut books for a living, or is just lying to themselves to justify wasting $20 on this disaster. That's the price of Silksong. That's $7 more than the original Hollow Knight. One of my personal favorite indie games in sound mind. I'll make a video on it later, but it's a good game. I don't really have much to say behind that. I just like the game a lot. Goes on sale for that price pretty often. Inscription, game I have hundreds of hours in, is that price. This game, I would say, is worth at most $10. And honestly, after playing it, I think I would be pissed even paying that. The game ends anticlimactically, with Henry hopping into a helicopter to safety as the credits roll. Or, like I said earlier, technically you don't have to get on the helicopter and you can just die, but it's not really an ending, that's more of an Easter egg. No sudden betrayal by Delilah. No actual scenes showing Henry becoming a better person, or maybe even Delilah rekindling her love with Javier. Just normal, old credits. With the game over, I'd say let's go over what I believe would be the main categories for a whole game, which in my opinion is gameplay, graphics, and story. Now, obviously there's other parts of the game, but to me, these are the three things that are like the bricks of a game. Meanwhile, the other parts would be more like the stuff sticking those bricks together. I forget the name, and cement, probably? I don't fucking know. I don't know why I tried to make that analogy if I don't know what it is, but I don't know, I'm pretty stupid. But anyways, let's see how this game holds up overall with those three categories. Now, graphics, I'll absolutely give them. It is a very pretty game with a very unique art style that I do enjoy. The other two, I can't give them. It's a walking sim that can't keep you interested with just its pretty graphics, so the gameplay gets boring and repetitive quickly. And as you can see from the 17 pages and like 40 minutes of gameplay footage behind me, I think the story is nonsensical and completely disappointing for its premise. But hey, these have just been my thoughts, and everything has been the conclusions that I have come to playing the game with no actual input by like anyone else. So let's see if any theorists can make this story make any sense. And I actually do mean that generally. I'm recording this before I've watched anything. So who knows, maybe I'll just look like a moron after everything I've said. So let's cut to future me to see how he's doing. So, not that many people have made actual theories on Firewatch. Most people just glazing the graphics and things like reviews. The main theory that I did find was by a guy named Captain Sauce about 9 years ago. The main theory he has is that Delilah knew Ned was in the forest and was helping him throughout the whole thing. One example he gives is how a new radio would not change the channel on the radio, which I pointed out, which, while it is true, like I said, I pointed it out earlier, it's a game, and I highly doubt that Campo Santo was actually trying to tie these two together, so I kind of give them a pass. He also does say that Delilah was constantly trying to get Henry to drop looking for who's stalking them, which is just flat out untrue. Like, the whole entire time she's going like, holy shit, who's stalking us, we gotta stop them. There's never really anything that just says, just leave it be. Heck, even at the ending, multiple times, she says, you go look for where that beeping thing goes. So yeah, it just feels kind of like coming to your own conclusions based on little to no evidence. And overall, I think this theory just makes zero sense. And honestly, it just kind of proves my point further, that so many of the story's beats just lead to it being nonsensical, that people have to come up with weird twist ways that were never actually shown in order to make the game more interesting. Like, who was Delilah talking to at the beginning of the story? Never explained. Who was running the science lab? Or was that just Ned setting it up real quick? Never explained. You know, unless it's in those sheets in all the lockboxes. I admit I didn't ever really read those that thoroughly, but from the looks of it, it was just like two Firewatch guys talking to each other, so I don't think it's anything useful. It's just like world building, but I could be wrong. I'll admit that that might be me being incorrect, but I don't know. I don't know how this game is still revered in the indie game community. I don't. All the characters are terrible, the gameplay loop gets old and repetitive quickly, and honestly, I feel if the graphics weren't as good as they are, people would trash on this game a lot more. Which I think is a terrible idea, because just because something looks pretty doesn't mean it actually means anything. I mean, have you seen some paintings? Ooh, that looks pretty, but it's just night sky. That's it. Nothing new, nothing great, just night sky. And while that is good enough for some people, to me, I want more than just something pretty to look at. I want something to grab onto. I want something to be stuck in my brain for years on end, thinking about, wow, that was a great take on a thing. But this game just doesn't do that. And I am very disappointed in this fact. Now, in this video, I want to start two things when it comes to these kinds of reviews, whether positive or negative. First, I want to give a letter grade, because in my opinion it gives more options than a 1 to 5 or even 1 to 10 scale. And for this game, I would give it a... I'd give it a C-. I think it's a high C-, but C- nonetheless. It's barely not passing. The first roughly hour of the game is interesting, and it only starts to fall apart after the night we name the fire. However, with our two main characters becoming incredibly unlikable and never really learning their lesson, I can't give this game any higher of a squirrel. I can't give this game any higher of a score. I wish it was a squirrel, it would have been more entertaining. Honestly, it probably would just be more entertaining to just watch a squirrel play in the woods. Now, as for the second thing, I would also like to give ideas on how a game can make itself better. In my Secret of the Mimic video, I kind of went over this, but I want to turn this into like an actual thing that in any review I do, for when I think a game has a good concept but needs to figure it out a bit more, like maybe chuck some stuff at a wall and see if it sticks, you know, that kind of thing. Now, this doesn't mean my ideas are good. I am by no means a professional, like, game writer. But, in my opinion, I feel like if I'm gonna trash on your ideas, I might as well give you ideas to trash on myself. So, without further ado, here's how I would fix Firewatch. Now, first, absolutely skip the whole dementia reasoning for abandoning Henry's wife. Now, I would personally recommend just, I don't know why I did that. You can't see my hands. I did the choking the life out of her. Kill her. That's what I'm saying. Kill the woman. And obviously, this would be the reason why Henry goes to the lookout tower. Because it's more about escaping the fact that his wife is gone and he can never see her again than ditching responsibility. And the ending of the game, he should come to terms with the fact that he can't see his wife ever again, and he needs to move on with his life. Now, it's probably a bit quick to move on, but it's a video game. Who knows? Maybe they could have had her die like 15 years ago or something. Now, this also has the added effect of making the weird romance side plot that they just kind of shoehorn in there least like less bad. Sure, this would definitely be a rebound relationship, but at least it's not just flat out emotionally cheating like it is in the real game. And as for the gameplay, I feel like you should try to put like some mini games in it for like the stuff you're supposed to be doing around the map in order to make the gameplay a lot less like repetitive. Like, I don't know exactly what they'd be, but like chopping wood in order to make like your fireplace, something like that. Anything. Like, think RDR2, like camp chores, similar to that, just a lot more fun. Like I said at the beginning of this, I'm not an expert, but it's just an idea. People in the comments, if you got better ideas, feel free to say them, because I don't really know much about this, but yeah, this would obviously make it so we do stuff besides walking and rope climbing. And now finally, we make it to the ending. To me, I would have Ned's plot be more of a side quest kind of thing, and actually bite the bullet on the government plot twist. There's no physical way Ned would be able to set up all of this stuff just to lead people on a wild goose chase to hide his kid, but also lead them straight to said kid. Like I said, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Therefore, have it be some form of government test on what two strangers that can only talk to each other would do over 3 months. Or maybe have Delilah like be in on the whole thing and have it be studying Henry on what he does during his alone time while dealing with the death of his wife. You know, any of these like 3 main like changes would make this game so much better, in my opinion. I say my opinion because I don't want to feel like I'm telling everyone that I'm better at all of these things. Now, it might not save the game, honestly, but it does at least make it more sensical, more fun, less confusing. But hey, these have just been my thoughts, and if I didn't miss anything, please do leave it in the comments. This is the first time I've ever made a video like this, So it is probably kind of rough, and as someone that is re-recording this after I've edited most of it, it is very rough, and I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can, but I don't have the best equipment with me. So if you sat through all of this, like, seriously, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I do want to make better content than this. And next video will definitely be shorter, that way I have more time to actually, like, edit it down. But hey, if you did somehow enjoy this, please do consider subscribing. It really does mean a lot to me. And if you want to see me live playing games like this, you can watch me on Twitch at the same handle of 2BDynoman. As of when this video comes out, I stream like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Well, depending on when you watch this, that may have changed. Like, if you're watching like 3 years from when this was released, it's probably not the actual schedule. I mean, it could be. I don't know, but it probably isn't. But hey, if you do end up missing any of the streams, I do also have a VOD channel on here called 2BDynoVods. So feel free to check that out as well. Otherwise, I've kept you here long enough. I do hope that you have a really good day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.